Chapter 20. Risa. The next time Sonia opens the trap door, Risa knows things are changing again. The time has come to leave the safety of Sonia's basement. Risa is the first in line when Sonia calls them to come up. Roland would have been, but Connor threw an arm out like a turnstile to get Risa to the stairs first. With the sleeping baby crooked in her right arm and her left hand on the rusty steel banister, Risa climbs the jagged stone steps. She assumes she'll be climbing into daylight, but it's night. The lights are out in the shop. Just a few nightlights are on, carefully positioned so the kids can avoid the minefield of random antiques around them. Sonia leads them to a back door that opens into an alley. There's a truck waiting for them there. It's a small delivery truck. On the side is a picture of an ice cream cone. Sonia hadn't lied. It is the ice cream man. The driver stands beside the open back door of the truck. He's a scruffy guy who looks like he'd more likely be delivering illegal drugs than kids. Roland, Hayden, and Mai head for the truck, but Sonia stops Risa and Connor. "Not yet, you two." Then Risa notices a figure standing in the shadows. Risa's neck hairs begin to bristle defensively, but when the figure steps forward, she realizes who it is. It's Hannah, the teacher who saved them at the high school. "Honey, the baby can't go where you're going," Hannah says. Reflexively, Risa holds the baby closer to her. She doesn't even know why. All she's wanted to do since getting stuck with the thing is to get rid of it. "It's all right," says Hannah. "I've talked it over with my husband. We'll just say we were storked. It'll be fine." Risa looks in Hannah's eyes. She can't see all that well in the dim light, but she knows the woman means what she says. Connor, however, steps between them. "Do you want this baby?" "She's willing to take it," says Risa. "That's enough." "But does she want it? Do you want it?" That seems to give Connor a pause for thought. Risa knows he didn't want it, but he'd been willing to take it when the alternative was a miserable life with a miserable family, just as Hannah is willing to save it from an uncertain future right now. Finally, Connor says, "It's not an it, it's a she." Then he heads off towards the truck. "We'll give her a good home," Hannah says. She takes a step closer, and Risa transfers the baby to her. The moment the baby is out of her arms, Risa feels a tremendous sense of relief, but also an indefinable sense of emptiness. It's a feeling not quite intense enough to leave her in tears, but strong enough to leave her with a phantom sort of aching, the type of thing an amputee must feel after losing a limb. That is, before a new one is grafted on. "You take care now," says Sonia, giving Risa an awkward hug. "It's a long journey, but I know you can make it." "Journey to where?" Sonia doesn't answer. "Hey," says the driver, "I don't got all night." Risa says goodbye to Sonia, nods to Hannah, and turns to join Connor, who's waiting for her at the back of the truck. As Risa leaves, the baby starts to cry, but she doesn't look back. She's surprised to find about a dozen other kids in the truck, all distrustful and scared. Roland's still the biggest, and he solidifies his position by making another kid move, even though there's plenty of other places to sit. The delivery truck is a hard, cold metal box. It once had a refrigeration unit to help keep the ice cream cold, but that's long gone along with the ice cream. Still, it's freezing in there, and it smells of spoiled dairy. The driver closes and locks the back doors, sealing out the sound of the baby, who Risa can still hear crying. Even though the door is closed, she thinks she can still hear it, although it's probably just her imagination. The ice cream truck bounces along on the uneven streets. The way the truck sways, their backs are constantly smacked against the wall behind them. Risa closes her eyes. It makes her furious that she actually misses the baby. It was thrust upon her at the worst possible moment in her life. Why should she have any regret about getting rid of it? She thinks about the days before the Heartland War, when unwanted babies could just be unwanted pregnancies, quickly made to go away. Did the women who made the other choice, feel the way she felt now? Relieved and freed from an unwelcome and often unfair responsibility, yet vaguely regretful? In her days at the state home, she was assigned to take care of the infants. She would often ponder such things. The infant wing had been a massive and overflowing with identical cribs, each containing a baby that nobody had wanted, wards of the state that could barely feed them, much less nurture them. "You can't change laws without first changing human nature," one of the nurses often said as she looked over the crowd of crying infants. Her name was Greta. Whenever she said something like that, there was always another nurse within earshot who was far more accepting of the system and would counter with, You can't change human nature without first changing the law. Nurse Greta wouldn't argue. She'd just grunt and walk away. Which was worse, Risa often wondered, to have tens of thousands of babies that no one wanted, or to silently make them go away before they were even born. On different days, Risa had different answers. Nurse Greta was old enough to remember the days before the war, but she rarely spoke of them. All of her attention was given to her job, which was a formidable one, since there was only one nurse for every 50 babies. In a place like this, you have to practice triage, she told Risa, referring to how, in an emergency, a nurse would have to choose which patients would get medical attention. Love the ones you can, Nurse Greta told her. Pray for the rest. Risa took the advice to heart and selected a handful of favorites to give extra attention. These were the ones Risa named herself, instead of letting the randomized computer name them. Risa liked to think she'd been named by a human being instead of by a computer. After all, her name wasn't all that common. It's short for sonrisa, a Hispanic kid once told her. That's Spanish for smile. Risa didn't know if she had any Hispanic blood in her, but she liked to think she did. It connected her to her name. What are you thinking about? Connor asks her, tearing her out of her thoughts and bringing her back to the uneasy reality around them. None of your business. Connor doesn't look at her. He seems to be focusing on the big rust spot on the wall, thinking. You okay about the baby? He asks. Of course. Her tone is intentionally indigent, as if the question itself offended her. Hannah will give her a good home, Connor says. Better than us, that's for sure. And better than that beady-eyed cow who got storked. He hesitates for a moment, then says, Taking that baby was a massive screw-up, I know. But it ended okay for us, right? And it definitely ended better for the baby. Don't screw up like that again, is all Risa says. Roland, sitting toward the front, turns to the driver and asks, Where are we going? You asked the wrong guy, the driver says. They give me an address, I go there, I look the other way, and I get paid. That's how it works, says another kid who'd already been on the truck when it arrived at Sonia's. We get shuffled around, one safe house for a few days, then another, and then another. Each one is a bit closer to where we're going. You gonna tell us where that is? Asks Roland. The kid looks around, hoping someone else might answer for him, but no one comes to his aid. So he says, Well, it's only what I hear, but they say we end up in a place called the graveyard. No response from the kids, just the rattling of the truck. The graveyard. The thought of it makes Risa even colder. Even though she's curled up, knees to chest, arms wrapped tight around her like a straitjacket, she's still freezing. Connor must hear the chattering of her teeth because he puts his arm around her. I'm cold too, he says. Body heat, right? And although she has an urge to push him away, she finds herself leaning into him until she can feel his heartbeat in her ears.